Okay, so we're going to talk tonight about the continuation of Sefer Vaikra, Leviticus. So the truth is, right now we're exactly with the Parsha Shavua, right? Because we're going to be reading this. Actually, this week now is Pesach, so they're going to skip the Parsha Shavua. You know what it is, right? On the holiday, they don't read the Parsha Shavua; they skip it, and they read the Pesach portion. It skips, So then, once Pesach goes out, we're going to go back to the regular portion, right? That's the way it is, right? So anyway, right, we're going to be reading this after the holiday. Yeah, it's going to be like that, right? But anyway, we want to know, right, what's in there now. We're already up to it. We're a little bit ahead of them. No problem, right? That's good. Nothing wrong with that. So anyway, right, here we're talking about something which is also practical. This is actually the portion that we read on Yom Kippur, right? We read this on Yom Kippur. What portion is this? Regarding the forbidden relations and forbidden relatives, the people you're not allowed to marry, right? All these things. They read this on Yom Kippur, this parsha. The question is why they read on Yom Kippur. So the Chazal say in the Talmud, it says the reason why we read it is because everybody comes on Yom Kippur, So this way, right, we want to have the biggest audience to show them what's forbidden, what's permitted, right? So everybody should know. Nobody has any excuses. You can't say, I wasn't there, I didn't show up. What do you mean? It's Yom Kippur, you didn't show up. But the truth is, nowadays it doesn't really apply so much this. You know why? Because most people don't understand what they're saying anyway, and they're not paying attention. So, I wish it was relevant to say this, but it's not so much. By the way, also in the old days, they used to have something interesting. When they read the Torah in the Tzibur, in the community, they also had a translator, who translated everything. Today we don't have that anymore. Only in the Temani community, right? And the Yemenites, they have this today.
One guy reads and one
guy translates, right? So you know how it is? He reads pasuk and he translates pasuk. You understand? Yeah. That's the way it used to be in times of Talmud. Can you imagine? Today we don't do that anymore, but Temani they do it, right? We still see that they have this custom until this day. But it can be quite, annoying for somebody who's not used to it. One pasuk, stop, translate, stop, translate. It takes a long time.
Are you allowed to stop Torah reading?
Yeah, for this you're allowed to, so they can understand. You know what I mean? They understand. They can understand it. Otherwise, what's the point, right? To read that you don't understand what they're reading anyway.
Yeah, but the guy's translating, and the people are asking him a whole bunch of questions.
No questions. It has to be just everybody quiet, just listen, right? That's it, right? That. One person translates, not 5 people, 10 people, whatever. That's the way it was. That's the way it was in the old days. So nowadays, what happens is, right, that we don't do that. So anyway, it's really not really worth. It's not really worth much anyway. This idea, and since it's not worth so much to read it on Yom Kippur these days, because people don't pay attention anyway. This is why we have to learn it, in the lectures, because otherwise people are never going to be acquainted with this thing at all. So let's just go through it, right, one by one. We're not going to take too much long time with this, right? We have also other things to discuss about Pesach. But it says like this, right, that ish et kol she'er besaro lo tikravu legalot erva ani Adonai. It says, right, that don't come and take your relatives, basically. That's what it's telling you, right? Ervat avicha ve'ervat imecha lo tegale, right? So it says, first of all, it uses the language erva, which is nakedness, But this is not, it's a little bit not literal. What does that mean? Because it says, right, the nakedness of your father. What does that mean? That you're marrying your father? That's not what it means, right? What it means is that you're marrying the wife of your father, who's not your mother, somebody else, right? Stepmother, whatever. So that woman you're not allowed to marry. That's what we're trying to say over here, right? What is it trying to tell you? Obviously, right, when your father is alive, you're not going to marry her because that would be adultery. That's not really, We're talking about even after he dies, you're not allowed to marry. That's the idea, right? Even if after the father passed away, you're still not allowed to marry, right, your stepmother. That's the idea, right? That's the first thing. Then we're talking about imecha, right, which is your mother. Here we're talking about really your mother, meaning what? You cannot marry your mother. That's what it means to say, right? If the Torah wouldn't tell you, how would you know, right? You would think that maybe it's allowed. So the only way to tell you, right, the only way you can know is that somebody's going to tell you that. So therefore, right, comes the Torah and tells you, right, you're not allowed to marry your mother. Okay, let's go on, right? We're going step by step. So then it says, right, regarding who? Eshet Avicha, right? Which is the what? The wife of your father. Right? Lo tegale ervat avicha. So, but it seems like what? That we already covered this, right? Because we already said your stepmother, right? So what's the difference over here? So the first verse is coming to tell you right? That person is not allowed to do that, obviously, before the father dies. And the second verse is coming to tell you even if after he dies, right? So it's giving you a succession, right? To tell you, right, that it's never, whether he's dead or alive, it's not allowed to do that, right? Whatever it is, that's the idea. So then we're going to go on. It says like this, right? Erbat eshet avicha, we said, erbat achotecha bat avicha, right? So then it's talking about your sister, right? And then it's talking about two options, right? Whether it's from your father's side, the sister, or from your mother's side, right? Maybe it's a half a sister. You understand? Or the more so if it's from both sides. All the more so if it's from both sides, right? What does that mean? That from your mother and father's side, she's your sister, full sister, right? All the more so. But even if it's a half sister, you're still not allowed to, right, to marry that person. The truth is, right, when it comes to goy, though, sometimes they are allowed to marry half sister, the goy. Right? When it comes to a Jew, though, not allowed to marry half sister at all, right? Under any circumstances. So by the goy, it depends on if it's from the mother side or from the father side. That's the idea, right? But by us, whether it's this side or that side, not allowed to marry your sister. Okay. That's the idea, right? Okay, very good. So then we go on, right? This also, by the way, applies in a different sense as well. Sometimes what happens is, right, that this sister of yours, she's not from marriage. What does that mean? Your father was never married, right? It happens something not adopted. We're talking about there was a rape, or some kind of a thing like this, The father went and raped somebody, and had a child from that rape, whatever, So nevertheless, right, even though there was no marriage there, still she's your sister. So therefore, you're not allowed to, right, to marry her. That's the idea.
What about adoption?
Adoption, that doesn't make her your sister. So it would be allowed to marry your adopted sister, yes. As long as it's done in the proper way, right? Whatever. In the sense that because when you're living in the same house, you have to be careful. You know what I mean? But once she grows up and you grow up and you're both, mature and everything, why not? There's no problem with that. There's no issue with that at all whatsoever.
I don't have to worry about that.
Okay, so let's go on, right? So then it says, Bat bincha or bat bitecha lo tegale. Also, we're talking about your granddaughter as well, right? Same thing there. Just like your daughter is forbidden to you, also your granddaughter is forbidden. That's the idea, right? So then it goes on to say, Erbat bat eshet avicha moledet avicha, right? So then it's talking about the daughter of the wife of your father, right? So meaning what? It's your stepmother's daughter. You're not allowed to marry her either.
We call it that.
We said stepmother, right? Now we're saying the stepmother's daughter.
No, but we said that we don't have to worry.
Very good, very good. You caught it, right? So here also, right, we're talking about two types. We're talking about one is through marriage and one outside of marriage. You understand? This is the idea. There is also inside marriage, there's outside marriage. So therefore, right, this is coming to also add that if it's outside of marriage as well, this is also not allowed. This is the way Rashi explains it over here. He brings this from the Midrashim, right? The Sifra, all kinds of Midrashim like this. So this is the way it's written over there. Tuat Kohanim also. Let's go on. So then it says, right, Ervat achot imecha lo tegale, right? Also your aunt you're not allowed to marry, right? What does that mean? Whether Ervat achot avicha, whether it's from your father's side or from your mother's side, the aunt is not allowed to marry, right? That's the idea. Now another one he adds over here, right? Which is what? Ervat achi avicha lo tegale, right? Also you're not allowed to marry what? Your uncle's wife. You're not allowed to marry. Uncle's wife. Okay? So what does that mean? This guy already died, whatever, or he divorced her, right? So you're not allowed to take her. Very good. So you know what it says right over here? Don't marry her. You know why? Because she's considered to be your aunt, this lady. In other words, she's really, right, your uncle's wife. But that's like an aunt. Sort of, So therefore, right, don't take her. That's what the Torah is telling you. Okay, very good. Let's go on. Then it says, right, Erbat kalatecha lo tegale. Then it's talking about the daughter-in-law. Right? So what does that mean? That obviously, right, if she's married to your son, that's obvious, right? It's adultery, right? So we're talking about, you understand? So it could be that it's out of wedlock or something like that, right? Or maybe he died, like, or something, whatever. So if that happened, not allowed to marry her in any case, right? To take her in any case. That's the idea. Very good. Um, so now, more interesting things, right, here going on. Ervat eshet achicha lo tegale, right? Then it talks about the wife of your. In other words, this is your sister-in-law, right? Your brother's wife, right? Et bat bena ve'et bat pita lo tikach, right? So, right. So, by the way, when does that apply? That applies when he had children with her. But if he had no children with her and he died, so then it's a mitzvah to actually take her, right? As you know, there's yibum. So it depends on the situation, right? So we're talking about that they had children. If they had children, not allowed to take her, right? That's the idea. Even if they had one child, you're not allowed to take her. That's the idea. Okay, very good. Then we're talking about what? Erbat Isha Uvita. We're talking about a mother and a daughter, right? Once you marry the mother, that daughter you're not allowed to marry anymore, right? Even though it's in a different time zone, whatever, different time frame, whatever it is, right? Once you took the mother, that's it. The daughter now becomes forbidden to you. Right, that's the idea, yes.
How about first the daughter, then the mother?
Same thing. Either way. Either way, right? Whichever side you start from, right? Okay. Uh, and then it says, like, not only that, right? You can't even take her granddaughter either, right? Not only her daughter, her granddaughter also is forbidden. That woman, right? Whatever you took. Very good. The isha elachota lo tikach. So here we're talking about what? Taking two sisters, right? To marry two sisters. Not allowed to do that. Even though Yaakov Avinu did that, right? He took 4 sisters altogether, but nevertheless, nowadays it's not allowed. After the Torah was given, the prohibition was brought in, right, regarding that. So what does that mean? He can't marry one while this one is still alive. But if one of them dies, he can marry the other one too, right? He can't marry them in the same lifetime. That's the idea, right? Yes. Okay. Very good. By the way, what's the reason why? The Chazal mentioned the reason for this. Why is it that you should not take 2 sisters, right? So what happens is like this, right? That they become rivals. They start to hate each other because of that. So it forms, right, exactly. It forms a rivalry, so it becomes like, psychologically a very difficult situation, whatever. And this is the reason why you're not supposed to do that. Okay. So then it talks about what? So then we're talking about a woman who's a nida, right? And also you're not allowed to, right, have her when she's nida. Meaning what? Even if you marry her, right? Obviously, it's not allowed. By the way, there are some people who think mistakenly, right, that the isur, the prohibition of nida, only applies when you get married. No, it also applies when she's single as well. You know what I mean? There's no difference between whether she's single or married regarding the prohibition of nida. It's the same prohibition, right? What does that mean? It goes on the woman. It doesn't go on the marriage. There's no issue of marriage there. It's not connected, right? So that's the idea. Okay, very good. So then it says like this, right? Vet eshet amitecha lo titen shechoftecha lezara toma ba. So then it's talking about what? Adultery in general, right? Again, right? That adultery is not allowed. That's the idea. With any man's wife, doesn't matter who the man is, right? It depends. He was your relative, it's not your relative. What difference does it make, right?
So no
it's all forbidden. Right, exactly. No married women. Right. Yes. That's the idea. Okay, very good. So these are basically the ones that we're talking about, and then it talks about a little bit something else. I shift into a different gear over here, which is not really applicable so much to us, but I'll just mention it for a second. Right, we're talking about giving your children to Molech, right? So what is this talking about? That there was Avodah Zarah in those days, they used to do, where they used to pass a child through a fire. In other words, a person would donate his child, right? Can you imagine such a thing? So he would take them to these crazy priests, right? Some nutty people, right? Nut cases, and they would take that child and make a bonfire, right? They had some kind of special fire that they had, and the child had to pass through the fire. Sometimes he would get burned, sometimes not. God knows, right? Whatever. Right? Sometimes he would be killed, sometimes he wouldn't be killed. It was like a gamble, like you're rolling the dice with your child's life. Can you imagine? This was something very, very crazy. So you would think, right? Why would anybody do such a thing like this? So in those days, Avodah Zarah was very powerful, was very strong. The Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah was very strong. So people used to do all kinds of crazy things with Avodah Zarah. Today, nobody even thinks to do such a thing like that. The truth is, there are also some crazy people today also. But it's not so widespread, this kind of thing today. But in those days, it was like a big thing. It was a big cult, this whole thing, right? It was called Molech. And it seems like how by the way, the Mefarshim, right, the commentators, how they describe this rite, this cult, there were several types, different types also, There was this type, that type, right, like whatever. Catholic, Protestant, all kinds of, denominations, right? This type of fire, one of them the child will be killed, one of them the child will not be killed. There was also the version where there was also another description that one of the Mefarshim gives, which is very, very pretty sick, but it's very, very gothic kind of thing. What happens is this idol, right? There was an idol who has his arms out like this, Avodah Zarah, and it was hollow inside this idol. So what would happen was that they would go inside there, inside the body, and start a fire, make a big fire over there, and the whole body would heat up, like become like super, super hot. So what happened was that they would put the child on the hands of this idol, and the child will get like burnt, Can you imagine? This is what they used to do with their firstborn child. They used to do this. It's such a sick, thing, right? But in those days it was very prevalent. Today, Baruch Hashem, we're not so much into this stuff today, right? Baruch Hashem, thank God. So anyway, it talks, by the way, about this in a very strong manner in the Torah, right? The person who does this kind of thing, gives his child to Molech like this, what happens is that he gets cut off, from the Jewish people. Not only that, but basically what happens is, right, that their family's not allowed to defend him or to protect him. They have to give him in, to sell him out. They have to sell him out. They have to squeal on him. They're not allowed to protect a person like that. They say if they protect him, they also get cut off. They also get punished because of this. It's considered to be something very, very severe. This kind of Kadosh Baruch Hu hates this kind of thing. Okay, whatever. So let's go on a little bit, right? I want you to tell you, right? Then it talks about the issue of homosexuality, right? What does that mean? Don't take a man like you take a woman. This is from here, right? Also brought down.
What does it say? Because I had an argument with my executive.
Over here it says like this, right? Don't sleep with a man like you sleep with a woman. In other words, don't have that same relationship.
No, he's talking to a man.
To'evahi. Yes. You're talking about to a woman. That's something else. Yeah.
He has a man in mind.
Yeah, two guys. Yeah, two guys. Yeah.
Woman and woman?
I'll tell you in 1 second. I just want to finish this idea, right? Yeah, no problem with that. Just want to, before we get to the woman, right? Just want to finish this idea. So, when is this issue transgressed, right? This prohibition. That means that they had sexual, encounter. You know what I mean? In other words, real sex. We're not talking about oral sex. That's something else. That's not really. I'm sorry. Yeah, the White House style, right? Yes. The White House. Okay, so. The Oval Office, right? The Oval Office. Okay, so that's the idea. Yes, you're right. It's not talking about that. It's talking about real physical, encounter. Okay. Another thing, by the way, which needs to be mentioned, since we're talking about this, is that what the Gemara says something very powerful about this. That Akadosh Baruch Hu, there's one thing that he looks at the Goyim, and he looks at something, a good point in their behavior. In other words, there's some shining, right, point in the darkness that they're into, these people. Mm-hmm. What is that? You know what it is? Says the Gemara, even though they do homosexuality, the Goyim, it's very prevalent by them, but what they don't do is they marry, same sex. Today, even this came in, by the way. So this taboo has been broken as well, which is something very bad, by the way, you should know. It's something very bad. What does that mean? That even the Talmud says, right, in the old days, even the Goyim didn't do such a thing like this, to marry the same sex. Mm-hmm. Today it's becoming like, there's a presidential guy, running for president. This Buttigieg, Juju, whatever his name is, right? This is disgrace. Can you imagine something like this? A person like this becoming president of America, God forbid. Such a disgrace.
You want me to ask the questions now or after we get... I'll ask the questions.
Whatever you want, but
after we're
just to deal with the women, right? Regarding the women, since you asked about that, so the truth is, right, the issue of two women being together is not mentioned in the Torah, right?
Okay.
Explicitly. But the sages learn it from, there's a pasuk that talks about the abominations that they did in Mitzrayim, right, in Egypt. Right? So don't do like the abominations they used to do over there. That's what it says. So the Chazal learn from this pasuk that's talking about lesbian. You know what I mean? That the Egyptians used to do that also.
So that's also
right? It was prevalent. So what does that mean? That this prohibition is not really right. Exactly. It's not as strong. It's not cutting off. It's not such a strong prohibition like that. But it is prohibited. The Rambam brings it down in halacha, right? In the halachot he brings it down, and so therefore it is prohibited. But the Rambam says, right? Even he mentions that if a woman does this, if a man will do it, so he will get lashed if he did that, right? And also he may be killed. Also he may be stoned as well, depending on if there was witnesses or not, whatever. But when it comes to the women, we don't lash them when they do this. Okay. So the question is why, right? Why is it that we don't lash them? So you know what the answer is? Something interesting, right? That there's really no deed over here. In other words, there's no sex act, because neither one of them has any organ, to have sex with. You understand? So they're just like each one is making a pillow of the other one. You understand? Squeezing them, squeezing and pillow.
Let them worry about
you understand? Pillow. It's like a pillow, So what can you lash a person on? There's nothing to lash him on. That's the idea.
You are the one that brought up that guy that is running for the president. Correct?
Yes.
You know what his defense was? That he's gay. It says in the Bible, I'm quoting him, that God created man in his image. He created blacks in his image. He created whites in his image. And he also created gays in his image. Because it says it's in a pasuk.
Right. But this is pretty bland explanation.
But
I'm sorry.
He said, why are you fighting with me? Ask God why you created me.
So you know what the answer is, right? The answer to that question is that God didn't create homosexuals. You know what I'm saying? They chose to be homosexual. It's your choice. You know what I mean? Nobody was created homosexual. That's the answer to the question. Right.
This is what he said.
Right. He's an idiot. He's an idiot. If that's his judgment, I can imagine what kind of president he's going to be. What kind of judgment he's going to have when he does politics.
But the point is that was his.
I don't think. By the way, America is ready for something like that. Thank God, because it's
not
yet, right?
It's
pretty scary. It is pretty scary. Yeah, pretty scary that there's such a thing like this going on. But that shows, by the way, that something has to be done, to curtail this kind of stuff. Because if they don't, Baruch Hashem, we have Trump. We have, who's a good man. God bless him. He's doing the best he can to stay away from this kind of stuff. To steer America clear of these things. But the question is, how long will it go? Even if he lives out his 8 years, right? What's going to be after? That's the question, right? We don't know what's going to be after.
If he's going to be good, then the Pence is going to be the president for another 40 years, and he's going to be just like Reagan Bush.
God bless. We'll see what happens. We'll go day by day. What can we do? What can we do? We'll go day by day. What can we do? That's the way it is, right? Okay. So then, right, it goes into the prohibition of bestiality, right? Also, it's mentioned over here, having relations with animals. This is also something, by the way, which is fairly prevalent in Europe, in America. It's done. It's done. More than people think, right? So therefore, the Torah warns us about this, right? Not to have any kind of relations like this, whether it's a man with a female or whatever it is, right? The male with the female, this, that, all kinds of stuff. That's not making a difference.
And we read this on Yom Kippur?
Yes, this is the one we read on Yom Kippur. Yes.
Translate. The congregation is going to live, right?
Or maybe the half the congregation is going to walk in to hear it. Maybe that's too juicy to leave. Too juicy. Jimmy, juicy stuff. What are you kidding me? They're going to leave? Okay, whatever.
I don't want to see. I don't want to remind myself what I had for breakfast.
Okay. Whatever it's going to be. So, very good. So, this is what the Torah warns us about, right? These prohibitions. So, you know what it says in the end? I'm warning you specifically about these prohibitions. You know why? Because this is what they used to do, the nations that were before you in the land of Israel, right? The Canaanim, the Canaanites. And this is why I expelled them from there, because they defiled the land with these abominations. So comes the Torah and warns us, listen, if you want to stay in your place, in your lot in Eretz Israel, don't do these things because you're going to be ejected, God forbid.
Where do we live now? Are we in Eretz Israel?
We go park, Forest Hills.
Okay, he just said in the place of your dwelling, right? What does it say? Where you live.
That what?
Because he expelled the Canaanites from the Holy Land because they used to do all of those.
Right, because they were going into Israel now. This is the reason why, right? Doesn't mean, by the way, doesn't give you permission to do it outside, obviously.
Why? Because that's what it says. Don't do it specifically here.
Right, but no, first it says don't do it at all, right? But then it tells you, right, that this is the reason why they were thrown out, So I'm warning you, right? Don't do this because otherwise you could also be ejected. This is the idea. This is the idea.
Because if we would say you shouldn't do it here because they
right. No, it's not the case. So, do you want to ask any questions or should we?
Just wanted to make that statement.
Okay, very good.
That was his excuse. Not even an excuse. Not even a defense. It was his statement. Right. God created him just like
pretty foolish. Pretty foolish.
God bless him. God bless everybody. Next.
This is right. Okay, so. Okay, so next, right. By the way, I just want to point out one thing to you before we go on. Regarding this church that burned, in Paris. Did you hear what the story is with it? You know what the story is? No. There's a big background story over here. Did you know about this? It's gonna shock you. I'll tell you something shocking.
No, this is what I hear.
So you know what it turned out? If you look into the history, right, of the Jewish people in France, so in the year 1240. There was some kind of persecution against the Jews in Paris, in France. This was very common, right? In Europe, it happened all the time, right? This was their favorite pastime, In America, favorite pastime is baseball. Over there, favorite pastime was anti-Semitism. You know what I mean? In Europe, that's the way it was. So, you know what they did over there? Exactly where the fire started, this church fire, which started in a certain, courtyard over there, whatever. So they say that courtyard, you know what happened over there? What happened was that there was one pope, right, who was at that time, in the year 1240, there was a pope, his name was Gregory. Right? Pope Gregory, right? So why do I tell you why Yimach Shemo? Because this guy, right, he made an edict at that time that all the books of the Talmud should be rounded up of the Jews and burnt, confiscated. So what happened was that at that time there was a king in France. This was Louis the Fourth, right? So what happened was that he now made a public forum, tribunal about this. Can you imagine? He conducted a tribunal. What does that mean? That their accusation was like this, right? That our Talmud, talks very critically about their religion, their avodah zarah. So what happens like this, right? That he invited a whole bunch of priests to accuse about this, accusations, and then some rabbis also to come in and defend. Make like a tribunal, right, whatever, whatever. So what happened was that they made the tribunal, and after the tribunal was over, they decided, right, that they all have to be confiscated, the Talmud, and they're all going to be burnt. So guess where they were burnt? Right there in that church. Can you imagine? This was, how long ago this was? 779 years ago. Unbelievable, this stuff. 12, right, something like that. So over 700 years ago, 750 years ago, this whole thing was. And now Kadosh Baruch Hu, look what he did. Gam Sheni Didia, that's Hashem is God is great.
So exactly, midah.
Right, exactly. That's the whole point. You understand? They couldn't put this fire out. Can you imagine? The one building they couldn't put out. What's the big thing, to put out a fire? It's from Hashem, this whole thing, that they burnt. They say, how many they rounded up all the Talmuds that were in France. That's a lot of books. You know what I mean? We're talking about thousands of books. So they say that they made over there 24 big cases, piles of Talmud. 24 piles. They piled it up into like a wagon, some kind of buggy, whatever. And they burnt all of them, like this, whatever. So what happened was that it was 24. Then they say that this building has 24 stories, So they got all kinds of correlations like this, all kinds of things. Very spooky stuff, very interesting. Okay, whatever. Just wanted to point that out, right? Okay, this was very.
It's a pity that the building was burned down.
What can I tell you?
Honestly.
Also, there's another thing you should know, by the way, that I looked into this building. This building is a very fancy building. You understand? It's something like, it's a big monument. You were there. So this monument, right? It really, if you really look into the whole history and what was made there and the whole, the symbolism, it's all anti-Semitic, like, folklore over there. You understand? What does that mean? Right. So what does that mean? Right. The whole point is over there, those statues and all those stories that are told over there, that the Jews are down and we're up. It's like an anti-Semitic kind of a show. To celebrate that the Jews are down and out. They don't have a savior. They don't have anything. We can do whatever we want with them. They're like they're rejected. Reject. That's it. That was the whole idea of this church. You understand? The whole statues there, the whole thing was to narrate this the downfall of the Jews. So it was the whole. This was a Catholic church. This is what it was. Yeah, this is what it was. Yeah.
To me, it was a beautiful.
That's something else. Yeah.
Exotic building.
Yeah, sure.
That's what it was.
Yeah. Okay, so we got the idea, right? We got the idea. Okay, so I want to mention, right, regarding Pesach, something interesting, right, which I told the community yesterday when I was here yesterday. That actually, right, we talked about, if you were, you were here the last several lectures, we talked about the mitzvot that we do on the Agadah, eating the matzah, the 4 cups of wine, arba kosot, afikoman, right, which is the end, and all these things, right? So can you imagine, these are like 6 mitzvot. 4 cups of wine, afikoman, and matzah, we're talking about 6 mitzvot. And there was also the kricha, the sandwich, okay, whatever, all these things. So, all these things, a person can do them. He did everything 100%, glad kosher, everything. And he'll go to Shemaim one day, right? And they're going to judge him, after his 120th, whatever. And they're going to say, listen, you didn't, that year, that, in 2019, when you did Pesach, you didn't do any of these mitzvot. Nothing you did. 0, So he's going to say, what are you talking about? I did nothing. What are you talking about? I did everything. I did matzah, I did arba kosot, 4 cups, I did afikoman, I did the sandwich, everything was 100%. What are you kidding me? I bought everything in the store, I went to glad kosher, everything. Well, so they said, no, you didn't do nothing. You got 0 credit for that. I said, 0 credit? What's going on? What is this? This is justice? This is miscarriage of justice. What's going on here? So they, they're going to agree to one thing. They're going to say, listen, okay, let's see the video. You want to see the video? What you did? We have the video right here, right? Everything's documented. Let's see the video. They show him, the family, this, his wife, children, this, that, everything. Nice family, cousins, this and that, whatever. And in-laws, So he says, oh, there you go. You see, I'm drinking over there the wine. Don't you see? I'm eating the matzah. They said, yeah, but you said you're fool. You're a fool. Said, you did that, but you still didn't do nothing. Why is that? Because you didn't recline. You were not reclining to the left side when you you see, you were sitting straight as a log, right? Straight as a telephone pole over there. What's going on with you, right? So why do I tell you this, right? This is a funny story, but the point is, right, that the person has to do his seba with these mitzvot that we just mentioned. He has to recline to the left side. If he doesn't do that, he has to do it again, the mitzvah. He didn't fulfill his obligation. You know what I mean? It's too bad, so a person should put his mind to that, right? What does that mean? Make sure you're a little bit reclining like this, whatever. What does that mean? The kiddush that when you make, arba kosot, the matzah, right, the hafikoman, all these things, they require this. What's the reason why? So the rabbi said, right, this is a form of freedom and emancipation. What does that mean? In those days, nowadays it's not like that, right? But in those days, people who are like high class people, people who are free, emancipated, right, exactly. They used to sit like this, on couches. They didn't have chairs, bucket seats, no bucket seats, right? Everything was like this, reclining, everybody was like, felt like very, talking with each other, right? Exactly. Nice pillows over there, cushions, all kinds of things. That's the way it was in those days. And that was a sign of freedom. So nowadays we don't do that. It's true. But since it was like that, the rabbis made a takana. If you don't recline, you didn't fulfill the mitzvah, right? That's what they said. So you must do that, right? In these things, yeah.
You must recline during this afikoman.
Right, all these things that we mentioned, yeah.
Or reading the entire Megillah.
No, that's not obligation. Not obligation. Unless you get a backache, like that. To go to a chiropractor, you don't want to do that, right? Okay. So what happens like this, right? That you didn't do that, you didn't fulfill the mitzvah. So interesting, right? Regarding this, there's actually an opinion which by the Rishonim, one of the earlier authorities, the Raviyah is the name, Rabbi Abiyazri. He writes something, very logical. He says that the truth is, nowadays we don't need to recline, when you do these mitzvot. That's his opinion. Very smart opinion. Why? Because he says nowadays we don't. This is not our custom to do like that. Nobody eats like that. Who eats like this? You know what I mean? They're gonna think you're nuts. They eat like this. So it's like, well, something is wrong with your back. You have back pain. Why do you stay like this for? What is this?
But we said that we recline during this Hidush.
Right. Yeah. So, but it's not the derech. Right. That says that Aviyah. It's not the derech to do this nowadays.
You are not reclining during the whole meal.
Sure. But sometimes people forget. It's the idea. So it says the Raviyah, nowadays you don't have to do that because it's not the derech, it's not the way anymore, right? It's like it's outdated, antiquated, It's an old, it's an old institution. So, but the truth is, right, the Shulchan Aruch doesn't agree with this. It says the Shulchan Aruch, you have to recline. If you didn't recline, you didn't fulfill your obligation. So therefore, the truth is, right, that a person has to do it. And if he didn't, says the Shulchan Aruch, if he didn't do it, he should do it again. So it's not easy, by the way, to drink more cups, of wine as it is. 4 is hard enough as it is, right? So now drink another 3 or 4. It's gonna make you totally wheezy. You're gonna be like, lose, right? That's it. You're gonna lose everything, right? So that's the idea. So therefore, a person has to be careful, right? Not to. But regarding there are other mitzvot that don't require heseba, right? Don't require reclining, which is what maror does not require. Karpas does not require. Why is that? Because these things are not derech cherut, they're not freedom. They're just the opposite, right? We're remembering the affliction, right? Exactly. So what's the point of reclining over there? What you're doing, like two things which contradict each other, right? You're free and you're afflicting yourself. What kind of thing is like this, right? What kind of thing is that? So therefore, right, regarding the maror and the karpas, does not need, right? So the only things that we need, as we said, is the arba kosot, the 4 cups, and also the matzot, right, as we said, and the afikoman, which is in the end, and the sandwich. All these things require heseba, right? This is the idea. So the person has to be careful, Otherwise, why should he lose his credit, right? And as I don't know if we mentioned with you, but we already mentioned here in the shul, that if a person has a hard time drinking wine, right, there's 2 things, first of all. Number one is you can take like a light wine, something which is not very high alcohol. Right, exactly. You can take like a 5% kind of thing, which is very weak. Something like the ladies' wine, something like that, what is not too strong. One of those things. Then those bubbly ones, those bubblies, those things. You can take one of those. Or, right, as we said, right, grape juice. So even though grape juice is not really alcoholic at all, but it's still called wine because it's called new wine, right? In halakha, that's the way the designation that it has. We don't call it grape juice in halakha. We call it new wine. So therefore, if a person has a hard time, and again, right here also would apply. What does that mean? That if a person already drank wine, and he didn't do it with haseba, with the reclining, so now, right, he should drink maybe, what do you call it? The grape juice. Why? Because he's going to get drunk otherwise. He's going to have to be too taxed with the wine. So he can drink grape juice and fulfill his obligation like that, and then go on right from there and continue right in the normal manner. That's the idea, right? So that's the best way to do these kinds of things. But regarding the heseba, by the way, now the reclining, the sages warn us not to do it on the right side, right? Only on the left side to recline. Why is that? Because they say the right side is dangerous. A person can choke like that. Why is that? Because it opens the air pipe, right? There's the windpipe, and then there's the food pipe, right? So the windpipe, it opens when you to the right side. That's the nature of the body. You understand? So a person could get it down the wrong pipe, start choking. You know what I mean? That's the way it occurs. So a person should not. They say, right? It's sakana, danger, to recline on your right side and eat like that. No good. Especially when you're talking, by the way, that's even worse, right? Because then it opens up the windpipe when you talk. You're breathing, So those 2 things are deadly. You know what I mean? Lo aleinu. So therefore, right, we want to do everything on the left side. So the best thing to do, right, when you're reclining, obviously, you should have something to recline on. You don't want to recline in the air. It's a little bit hard to do that. So they say, right, get some cushions, get some pillows, and let's say if you have an armchair, right? So put a pillow on the armchair, and then you're good. You know what I mean?
Reclining for 5 seconds.
Right. Whatever. It makes it comfortable. It gives that whole ambiance of freedom. Everything is comfortable and beautiful. Nice and organized. You know what I mean? That's all.
Put a special armchair for me.
Very good. Enjoy. Right. So that's the idea. Right. So now the question is regarding the women. By the way, do the women also have to recline or not? Right. That's the question. So says the Talmud, the women don't have to recline. They're not obligated at all to recline. And by the way, not only that, they're not allowed to do it either. So what's the idea? Why not to? Why not to say? Because they say, right, that they're under the authority of their husband. The woman is under the authority of the husband. Okay, I'm not going to get into that now, but
right? No, I want you to. Let my wife listen.
Okay, so the idea is like this, right? That when you're under the authority of somebody and you just recline like that, it's a chutzpah like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is this? Why are you sitting like this? What is this? I'm your master. Sit respectfully in front of me. Don't disrespect me. That's the idea. You know what I mean? So says the Talmud, because of this reason, women are not obligated to recline at all. There's also another thing which is similar to that, similar concept, which is what? Let's say if a person is a man, he has a slave. And today there's no slavery, but in those days there was slavery, So a slave also is not allowed to recline in front of his master, for the same reason. This is your authority, Your master is there, and you're being like this, reclining like that. That's the idea. There's also another thing which is similar, which is that what they say that if the Talmid and the Rabbi are there, so he shouldn't recline in front of his Rabbi, It's chutzpah, like that, whatever. These kinds of things, you understand? So that from the Talmud came out like this, but they say, right? So they say there's an exception, one exception to this rule. You know what the exception is? They say that if it's Isha Chashuva, so then she should recline. What does that mean, Isha Chashuva? Important woman, somebody who's like a woman who's like a, right? What does that mean? She's a big business lady, makes a lot of money, or she's a big lawyer, or something like that, or.
What about
it's interesting regarding the mother, but I'm going to go step by step. But also, let's say she's like a congresswoman, let's say she's a politician, big time, lady, This lady is not under your authority, she can put you in jail if she wants, so forget about that, right? There's no issue like that. So therefore, they say, right, if it's Isha Chashuva, so she should recline, right? Yes, important woman, right? So when we're talking about women who should not recline, we're talking about like the housewife type, you know what I mean? Right. Housewife, average garden variety wife that you have, especially in the old days, most women were not working in those days. Today, most women are working. That's something else. It's a different world today, whatever. And many of them are making more money than the men are. You know that, right? I don't have to tell you. Okay, very good. You know very well. So, okay. So now the situation is like this, right? So bottom line, what happens today? How does it come out to be today with this whole situation, right? So says the Ramah, interesting, right? It was 500 years ago, the Rabbi of the Ashkenazim. He writes in the Shulchan Aruch over there, on the gloss of the Shulchan Aruch, he says, right, by us, the Ashkenazim, says, all our women are chashuv, are important, so therefore they all do recline. So what does that mean? Ashkenazi ladies are stronger, you know what I mean? You know how it is, right? Ashkenazi ladies in the house, they have a lot more authority, they have a lot more, whatever, you know how it is, right? That's why people, they warn you about that, they say, listen, you have to know what you're getting into, You have to know what Ashkenazi ladies are very strong. They're very, they're very, absolutely, you're right. Things have changed. Yes, you're right. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. You know why? Because it's a matter of culture. In the old days, right, the Sephardi ladies were in the Eastern culture, which was the ladies who were down. Very subjugated. In the Western culture, the women are more liberated, right? So it depends on the culture that you live in. So, right, as we said, therefore, so how does it come out to be? So it says a Kaf HaChaim, right, regarding this, who was about 100 years ago, Sephardi rabbi. He says that nowadays all the women should recline. No matter it's Sephardi, Ashkenazi, whatever it is, everybody should do it. And that's a custom, he said, also by all communities. The question is why. So he says the reason is because the man today doesn't care about that. In other words, he doesn't care that his wife is reclining. Doesn't insult his ego, his kavod. Doesn't affect him in any way. So therefore, right, they say that Baruch Hashem. So they say that nowadays, says the Kaf HaChaim, they should all recline. The man doesn't care about that today, Which man is going to say, you're being chutzpah, that's chutzpah to do like that in front of me? Nobody cares about these things today, you know what I mean? There's a lot worse things going on besides that, right? So, I wish that was the worst thing that was going on, right? So that's what the Kaf HaChaim says. Also, my Rabbi, Maran, he also said, right, that today all the women should recline. Because today, this culture doesn't exist anymore. This, this whole thing, this whole concept is not really, right? It's not around so much anymore. But interesting though, right? That now we're going to combine two of these things, right, that we just mentioned, and make a law out of this, right? What does that mean? We said that there's an opinion of the Raviyah. The Raviyah says today we don't have to recline. Nobody has to recline. Why? Because it's not the culture anymore to do that, right? So, since now the women, right? If the woman didn't do b'diavad, if she didn't do, she forgot to recline, right? So her, we don't tell her to go back. Right? Why is that? Because now we're going to rely on the fact that what? For number one, from the Talmud, she doesn't have to recline anyway. And also because of the Aviyah, who says today is not done. So we take those two combinations, right? We make it like a double dot, whatever, and we say, right, the women are not obligated to if they already did not do it, they missed it, right? They don't have to go back and do it again because of these two reasons. But the men have to go back because the Shulchan Aruch says the men have to go back. So, right, it's a little bit different over here between the men and the women, but that's the idea, right, more or less, right? So you have to recline. But as we said, right, for the maror and for the karpas, we do not need that. So we got the idea, right? That's the very good. So regarding what you asked about, by the way, you asked, does a person have to recline all the way through the Haggadah, right? So the truth is, right, it is something which is like considered to be like praiseworthy to do that, but since it's hard, the sages did not require it. But if a person wants to do it as a chumrah, as a stringency, he can do it if he wants, whatever. If he wants to, right? If it's possible for him to do that, it's not so easy today. We're not used to it, It's very uncomfortable today to do that. It's like you feel like you're like totally, can't enjoy it like that. It's just totally, awkward. It's very awkward. It's an awkward position. That's the idea, So therefore, we do not require for the person to recline all the time. So as we said, right, that the afikoman also has to be done like that. So as we mentioned, I don't know if we mentioned it, but the afikoman has to be done also before midnight, which is about 12:30, 12:40. So they say, by the way, by that time you should be finished everything already. What does that mean? The Haggadah, the meal, right? The Birkat Hamazon, all the 4 cups, Hallel, everything was done. That's the idea. That's the another thing which I want to mention, which is what that Al Bashalam Maran used to stress to us one thing, that the Sephardim have a very good custom when it comes to Leil Pesach, which is that we say Hallel also at night before the Haggadah. Where is that? In the shul. When we come to the Bet Knesset, when we come to the synagogue, we say also Hallel after the Arvit over here. That's the way it is, right? This is considered to be a very good custom according to the Kabbalah. So therefore, they say, right, that don't miss that. Try to make sure that you say Hallel in the shul, or if you didn't go to shul, you should say it at home. Whatever. The idea is, right, that this is considered to be something really praiseworthy, and they say, right, that even many of the Ashkenazi rabbis who saw this custom of the Sephardim, they adopted it because they said, this is like considered to be very, very good. So it comes out basically, right, that we're saying Hallel that night several times because we're going to say it before the Haggadah, and then during the Haggadah it's like 1.5 Hallels over there. We're doing like a short Hallel before the second cup, and then we're doing a long Hallel before the 4th cup. So it's like a whole, big thing over there,
Okay.
right? So that's the idea. Now regarding, right, all the steps of the Haggadah, the last one is called Nirtzah, right? So what is Nirtzah? That means that we start to do these songs, right? Hadgadiyah, all kinds of things like this. So these are not obligations to do these things, right? Once a person finishes the whole seder of the Haggadah, if he wants, he can get into this. The kids like it, whatever. They like to sing a little bit, whatever. It makes them feel happy, whatever. So if they like to do it, do they enjoy it, they can do it. It's not an obligation, but it's like a custom, to go on, to say these songs, to sing these songs. They say, by the way, that actually these songs, they have allusions to some very Kabbalistic things there going on. It's not like just a simple, like silly song. It's talking about goats, all kinds of things like this. Why would you want to sing about these silly goats? What kind of thing is this? They say, right, that there's some deep illusions over there according to Kabbalah. So the truth is, right, that it's very commendable to do it. But if a person is tired, he can skip over that, right, and go to sleep, whatever. That's the idea, right? Okay, so how much time do we have? Let's see how much time we have.
Before my sister calls.
Okay, we got time. Okay, so I want to tell you also some other things, right, regarding the holiday as well. I was asked, right, some questions regarding the holiday, regarding the kashrut also. So one of the questions I was asked was just yesterday, regarding things which contain, right, all kinds of derivatives of chametz, which come from chametz, the sources from chametz. They're not chametz themselves, but they're derived from chametz. So one of them is like citric acid, right? Citric acid is an ingredient that they put into like soda pop, drinks, soft drinks. Why they put that? To add tartness to the, so it shouldn't be too sweet, too tart.
Yeah.
That balance, that balance you have to find, whatever. So you got to make a nice taste. So this citric acid makes it a little bit more tart. So the problem is, right, that in, this citric acid, much of it is made from wheat, So that's why they're saying, right, it's chametz. Don't use these.
These Tums, okay? Tums.
Oh, Tums. You
You
got to check what's in there. You got to check what's in there. But the truth is, that if you don't know what's in there, if the ingredients are not written on the package, are they written?
Yeah,
package?
sure, yeah.
So you can show me. I'll tell you. I can tell you. Oh, that's okay. My eyes are pretty good. I can see it. Right? If you show me, I can tell you, or you can send it to me. Whatever.
Because
Text.
I have heartburn and I gotta use it.
You got to use it, right? Let me ask you a question regarding Tums. I haven't used it for a while. Does it have a good taste also?
No, horrible.
Horrible taste.
I buy the plain one.
So for sure, that's allowed. For sure, that's allowed.
No flavor.
Right.
No fruit flavor.
The only ones which are questioned is the flavors, right? There you have to check a little bit. But the ones that have no taste or bad taste, no problem with them. No problem. Yeah, yes. Right. That's fine. That's fine. You don't have to worry about them. God bless. So we're talking about citric acid, right? Things like this, which are derived from wheat. So the question is, are you allowed to have sodas like that have citric acid? Many sodas have this, by the way. So the truth is, right, that all the extra companies do not give extra on these products that have citric acid. But my rabbi, he has actually two, right, chuvot. He has two responses that he wrote about this. So he writes, interestingly speaking, right, that these things are allowed to have these kinds of drinks. The reason is because even though they're derived from chametz, there's like 3 or 4 reasons over there why they're already altered into a different mode altogether. What does that mean? Number one, it's nullified. The amount is very small of the total mixture, so it gets nullified 60th. Right? There's a rule in halakha that when you have a 60th more than the prohibited object, it nullifies it. So it's nullified. Number one, that's the first reason why it's allowed to have the citric acid. Number two, also because it's chemically altered. What does that mean? It used to be, this, like X, now it's Y. It's something else altogether. It became a different substance. It used to be, let's say fat, and now it looks like a plastic. It's not the same thing anymore. You understand? They do chemical alteration, do all kinds of things over there to alter it, and since it's altered, right, it says Rabbeinu Yonah that this is not considered to be anymore the original ingredient. That's number two. Number three, also, it's rendered not edible. What does that mean? During the process, it becomes like hard, like a rock, like a salty kind of thing, substance, whatever. You cannot eat that. It's not edible. Even a dog wouldn't eat it, right? So therefore, there's also another reason why, right? It's allowed to, right? All kinds of reasons like this. There's also another reason, which is now, right? Much of the citric acid is made synthetically in labs. It's not many from wheat so much. So therefore, right, we have several reasons why it's allowed. So there are also, by the way, other issues that are similar to this. Just to explain to you how this works, it's actually kind of interesting. And you'll see right all around how this halacha works in all kinds of issues. And you see, by the way, the halacha is also very interesting, very deep. So there's also another case which is similar to that, which is a coffee mate, right? That we have to right, yeah, exactly, right. Instead of the non-dairy creamer, that's it. That's what they call it, right? Okay, so this coffee mate, by the way, has also an ingredient which is derived from milk. They call it non-dairy. You see the contradiction, right? Contradiction, whatever. So the question is, for us Jews, is this considered to be parv? It's not dairy, or it's dairy. So because the OU gives a hechsher on this, right, on coffee mate, but it says D over there, right? D means dairy, right? So then what? I can have it after my meal for dessert, coffee dessert, whatever, or not? That's the question, right? Or do I have to have something else? I don't know, whatever. So what's the answer? The answer here is also the same thing here. It's also chemically altered, and it's rendered not edible during the process that they go through with it, and therefore this is not really at all issue. So it's considered to be really in halakha, even though the OU puts D over there, but halakha is considered to be parv, the coffee mate. You understand? So therefore a person is allowed to have it after a meal, whatever, right away. You can have a coffee with coffee mate. That's another similar concept, right? There's also another interesting thing, which is also similar to this, which is that a person sometimes takes pills, right? And the coating of these pills is it looks like a clear plastic. But if you look in the ingredients, it's actually made from pork. It's like from porks, whatever, something from the pigs. Whatever, you understand? So it's a pork derivative, basically, this thing, Interesting, right? Did you know this? It has no taste, but it comes from pork. So the question is, are you allowed to have that? It's very common, by the way. It's very common, this thing. You know why they use pork? Because it's very cheap. It's like the refuse, they throw it in garbage and stuff. So, why would nobody's going to eat this? It's just garbage. So therefore, they make something out of it to make it get use out of it. Pork in America is very, very commonly used. It's all over the world, right? It's all over it's very common. So therefore, right, the question is, are you allowed to have that, or are you considered to be eating pork? So the answer is, it's allowed, because here also we have chemical alteration. It's not edible, right? All these things. So therefore, it's already different substance altogether. So when you have these kinds of issues, right, in many kinds of applications, we have these kinds of things. So all these cases, the person has to actually study this, right, to see what's going on there, do some research, whatever. But if he sees, right, that it's all these things that are applicable that we're talking about, so then, right, it would be rendered edible, right? It would be allowed to use, right? This we're talking about whether it's Pesach or not. It's not issue, right? Pork is not issue of Pesach. It's an issue of kashrut.
When do we start counting over?
So the Omer is going to start to be counted on the second day of Pesach, right? Right, the night, meaning after Avit, right? Yeah.
Now, during this 40 days or whatever.
You want to get into this? Yeah, it's good. Yeah, good.
No, I'm just curious. Yeah. Are you allowed to buy anything, or it's better not?
There's no prohibition to buy clothing or cars or jewelry or anything like that. No prohibition. No prohibition on that. No prohibition. No. There are some people who are stringent about that, but it's not halakha. It's not.
I'm not talking about going to a parties and weddings.
Right. Yes.
We know
yes.
that we don't do that.
Yeah, we don't do weddings. We don't do weddings. Yeah, we don't do weddings. Yes. But bar mitzvah you can do.
Not with music.
With music, yes. Want to surprise you? You can do with music. You bring a band, everything. You know why? Because this is something which you cannot do some other time. It has only one time. Bar mitzvah is only one day. You should do the day of the birthday, by the way. That's the idea. The Hebrew birthday. You know what I mean? So if you push the bar mitzvah to a different day, that you're already losing the effects of it. In a sense. You know what I mean? Because that's like a yom tov for the child. It's like a kaidriya. You understand? So according to halacha, if a person does the bar mitzvah on the day of the birthday, the Hebrew birthday, he can bring music and everything. Everything is allowed. That's the idea. Also, if he does brit milah, same thing, right? You can have music there, dancing, right? But weddings, you know why we don't do in the weddings? Because you can do it a little bit later. What's the big deal? What's the big rush? You know what I mean? Nothing is holding you up so much. But they say, by the way, some poskim, because of this reason that we mentioned, right? There are things which are time bound, like bar mitzvah and brit milah is time bound. You cannot do it different later. What's mean later? It's now. What later? What want to do it next year? That's not relevant to do like that. But they say, right, regarding a person who never had children, and he needs to have children. So some people even allow that, right, to do a wedding during that time because it's considered to be like something very pressing. But we don't do it. The custom is not to do it, by the way.
But a car you're allowed to buy.
For sure, no question about it. You're allowed to buy a car. You're allowed to buy jewelry, right, clothing, anything like that. All the goodies, right.
I'm looking for my car for the past 3 months already. I couldn't find it.
For your son, you mean?
For my son, yeah.
Okay.
So he says that he doesn't want to buy it during this all the time.
Tell him it's okay. No problem. Yeah, no problem. God bless him. It shows, by the way, that he's a serious person. That he's concerned about this. Very good. It's a good sign. What can I tell you? Give him a thumbs up. Put a like on him. Give him a like. Okay, that's good. Baruch Hashem. So regarding that, right? Since you wanted to talk about this, let's talk a little bit more.
Yeah.
So then what is allowed to do during the Omer time? What is not allowed to do, right? So the custom is not to do haircuts and shaving, right? That's the idea, right? So what is the reason why we don't do these kinds of things? Because with Talmidim and Rabbi Akiva that died at that time, 24,000, they say that they started dying on that day, right? The second day, and it continued right all the way through, right, until Shavuot. Right? There's different versions of that, by the way. Some say only the first half of that time. Some say the second half. Some say it was the whole thing altogether, combined. There's all different versions. But our custom, right? Most Jews, what they do is until Lag BaOmer, they don't do these things, right? Which is the 33rd day, and then the day after, everything is allowed already, right? That's the idea, right? So we don't do haircuts. We don't do shaving. They say, by the way, that some actually do allow to take a shave on Rosh Chodesh. What does that mean? Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Since Rosh Chodesh is a holiday, if a person has a hard time, to hold up the beard that long, so the Red Vaz allows to take a shave on Rosh Chodesh. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't allow. What they say, right? If a person has a hard time with it to hold it, it itches him, all kinds of stuff, right? So they say if he wants to take a break from that, so Rosh Chodesh is the best time to take a break, to take a nice shave. Right, to get cleaned up.
Now, whatever you just said, haircuts, not important. Shaving, is it a custom, or is it a...
All these things that we're mentioning, they're all customs. They're all minhagim, right? They're all customs. But the truth is, right, according to Kabbalah, there's something a little bit deeper there. that this time they say, right, that to cut hair at this time, it's not so good. According to Kabbalah, there's some kind of bad quality of judgment that comes on a person.
When you say hair, you mean hair or beard also?
So the interesting thing regarding that, right? What you're saying is that what you're asking is that the real prohibition over there is more on the hair, right? And then they also extended it to the beard as well. But the hair is more stringent than the beard. That's the idea. So therefore, right, on Rosh Chodesh, a person could take a break if a person has a hard time with that. The Rabbi Al Shalom Maran, my Rabbi, he even allows a person who has a real hard time with this, right? Like he's like face starts to itch like big time, can't take it. So he says you can shave also erev Shabbat every Friday, for Shabbat. So once a week, whatever. That's a big leniency, what he's saying, whatever. But since it's a custom, so we can be lenient somewhat with these things. I mean, there is some room to be lenient. That's pretty much that as far as we can go. We can do once a week. That's pretty, it's not so bad. That's tolerable, But if a person can tolerate it, so really it's a very big mitzvah, right, to go all the way through until Lag Bomer, right? And then the next day you can get a haircut, whatever, all these kinds of things. There are also, by the way, some who allow on Lag Bomer itself as well. Some authorities allow that. The Ashkenazim, that's what they do, right? The Ashkenazim, they do on Lag Bomer. We do the next day, the starting, right? The day after. But if a person has a hard time also, waiting another day, let's say he has something pressing over there. So he can shave also on Lag Bomer as well. To get a haircut on Lag Bomer, if it presses him. He's got, let's say, a business meeting, or he's got to go, meet somebody. The guy look like a gentleman, not look like a shaggy, shaggy rug. You know what I mean? So he wants to look like a man. By the way, the truth is that because this is only a custom, there are several leniencies regarding this, right? Regarding the shaving and this kind of thing. What does that mean? Let's say a person is, dating now, right? He's going on shidduchim. He's looking for a wife, so he's allowed to shave because going on a shidduch. With looking like a werewolf, you don't want that, right? So you're allowed to also shave because of that. Same idea, right? Or let's say a person is going to, let's say, right, he has a business meeting, and if the person sees him like that, he's going to say, this guy's a bum. I'm not going to deal with this guy, looks like a loser, So therefore, if this person is a very important person, he has to look in front of him nice, presentable. He's allowed to shave because of that as well. Or let's say he's going to meet the president, whatever, look like it doesn't look nice. It's not kavod for the malchut, for the king, So you got looking for. So you're allowed to shave also because of things like this. All kinds of things like this, right? We have all kinds of leniencies. Why is that? Because when it's a custom, there's always room to play around a little bit there. I personally saw, by the way, some big rabbis also who sometimes would shave, during that time, because they had some kind of reason, like one of these reasons that we mentioned.
I remember in Philadelphia, all the rabbis had a beard except one. And he was not a rabbi, he was just a teacher in Philadelphia.
Right, teacher, okay, good, okay.
And I asked another rabbi, whatever. He said, that gentleman, he teaches in another school.
Oh. Okay.
He told us Navi.
Okay.
I forget his name, but he teaches in another school. So
okay.
They were lenient with
it. Okay.
All the rabbis, they had beard.
Right. Okay.
They none of them had beard.
Yes.
But they did not shave during this period.
Yes. But there's also There's also custom, by the way, which is very good on this time, during this time, to learn Pirkei Avot, right? The Ethics of the Fathers. This book from Mishnah, which talks about all kinds of praiseworthy things about a person's character, the way to behave, derech eretz, ziloba, proper moral attitudes, all kinds of things like this in the Pirkei Avot. Why do we learn this book during that time? You know why? Because they say that the big Yetzer Hara of that period is machloket between people, like fighting, insulting each other, gets rolled up, start to insult each other, becomes like a big, So therefore they say, right, that in order to remind a person, to get back to, logical thinking, get back to normality, learn a little bit, there's ziloba, derech eretz, how to behave with your friend, how to behave with your fellow Jew. That's what the Pirkei Avot teaches you, So we want to emphasize this issue, right, during that time, which is, right, to have unity amongst the Jewish people. They shouldn't be fighting.
One of the reasons why those 24,000 students passed away because of the
Right, they didn't respect each other. That was right. They treated each other,
Each other, each other's knowledge.
Right. The truth is, doesn't say that they were jealous, or it doesn't really say that. Could be that's true. It doesn't say that. I mean, it's illogical, to say such a thing like that. It usually comes from jealousy, these things. But the truth is, it just says basically they didn't treat each other with kavod. Yeah, no respect. So what does that mean, right? That when a person, they say that when a person knows a lot of Torah, but doesn't behave like a human being, this is like one of the worst things. Desecrates the name of God. They say, oh, this rabbi, what kind of rabbi is this? This is a disgrace. How does he behave? Behaves like a jerk, insults people, opens up his mouth, starts people like going crazy with this guy. They say, right? What is this? What is the allusion to what is the allegory? The allegory is like you have a swine, right? And he has a 24 karat gold, in his nose, right? That's what the rabbi is. Where's the 24 karat? That's the Torah that he has. But he behaves like a swine, So what do we get from there? That's the idea, you know what I mean? So a Talmid Chacham all the more so, right? Has to be careful. So they say, right, that they died because of this. You know what I mean? Because this is considered to be like a very big thing. Actually, there's a rule like this, right? Hambazeh Talmid Chacham, right? He's like, he's liable to death. They're a person who disgraces Talmid Chachamim, treats them like trash. Like disrespectfully, screams at them, yells at them. That's what they did to each other. You know what I mean? They didn't respect each other. So that's why they died, right? No, don't wonder. Especially people like that who are judged on a different standard. You know what I mean? Talmid Chacham is not.
Explain that.
Yeah, we can finish off with this, right? What is the Talmid Chacham? Good way to finish this discussion.
Okay.
Talmid Chacham, the truth is, right, there's several definitions of what a Talmid Chacham is. There's different levels, you know what I mean? Different degrees. There's black belt, purple belt, you know what I mean? That's it, right? Okay, so what? Let's go to the black belt, right? What is a black belt? The left deal, right? Right, top of the top. That means it's a Chacham who is very expert in halakha, can answer questions in halakha. You come to him, listen, what about this and this, and he gives you an answer. He knows. He's very, very right. He's very expert, right? Very expert. By the way, there are many who give answers, but they don't give the right answers. We're not talking about people like that. Exactly. That's not the idea, right? It's to give the right answer. What does that mean? You have to know what you're talking about. That's the idea. So if a person is so expert like that he can answer all the practical questions, day-to-day questions. There are some specialty questions also, maybe not be able to answer it because this requires research, right? Requires research.
What's a posek?
A posek is this exactly what we're talking about. That's a posek. Posek is a person who knows how to paskin halakha. Tell you, listen, this is allowed, this is not allowed, right? This is kosher, this is not kosher, this is tameh, this is tahor, this is clean, this is unclean, right? This is the posek. This is the real Talmid Chacham, a person who has this expertise. So what does that mean, practically speaking, right? There has to be somebody who's learning Torah all the time. You know what I mean? Because otherwise you cannot get to this level. That is the person we're talking about, learns 1 hour a day and then goes to 47th Street.
Yeah, right.
That's not, you know what I mean? That's the idea. It cannot be like somebody like that. It has to be somebody who's basically totally involved in Torah. This is the top. This is the creme de la creme. You understand? There's something a little bit below that, right? Which is what? Right, exactly. We're talking about somebody who studies Torah like all day, yeshiva or kollel. He's not on the level of posek yet. But he's learned, he has wisdom of Torah.
Learning what?
Yeah.
Chumash, Gemara.
Well, in the kollel, in the kollel, we're not talking about learning Chumash because this anybody can do. Anybody can learn Chumash. You know what I mean? We're talking about learning more advanced things. More deep Talmud. Things like this, halakha. Deeper kinds of issues which require more, right? Or even other things as well. Like for instance, midrashim, agadah. This also requires a lot of wisdom. Whatever, all these kinds of things. So if a person studies Torah all day in yeshiva, he's a student, yeshiva boy. He doesn't know how to paskin halakha, but he studies all. He has a lot of wisdom. So that person also has a lower level of din of Talmid Chacham. What does that mean? You have to give him respect. A person like that, he has a lot of Torah. Right? Exactly. Yeah. Somewhat.
Okay, no problem. Talmid Chacham. Let's go.
So below that, basically, right? That's pretty much. That's pretty much the. There's also people who are called like Ben Torah. What does that mean? It's a person who's knowledgeable in Torah in general. In other words, he studies on a daily basis, on a regular basis. He studies. He knows how to open up a book and read it, to tell you, explain to you, right? That's not really called Talmid Chacham, but it's like a Ben Torah, a person who knows how to, he could give like a lecture, for 15 minutes between Mincha and Arvit, entertain you a little bit, things like this. You know what I mean? This is
Okay. Now, question. Now let's get down to specifics.
Yeah.
our rabbis,
yeah,
Rabbi Abba, you, Rabbi
yeah.
Abba, are you guys Talmidim Chachamim? What are you considered to be?
Well,
I mean, it's not. I'm not talking.
you want to tell something really funny? I'm gonna make you laugh now. Okay. Okay. This is a good joke, right? It's true. It's a true joke. They once, the big karate guy Bruce Lee. Remember him, Bruce Lee? The famous guy, right?
Of course.
So one time they asked him, a very, very strong question. They said, listen, people are skeptical about these things, skeptical. They asked him, they said, listen, Bruce, by the way, Bruce Lee was born in America. He was American, even though his background was in China, his parents, he was born in America, Bruce Lee. So they asked him, they said, Bruce, is it really true, that you're really as good as you are as a fighter? Is you really as good as people say? They say, because they think all kinds of fantastic things about you. Wonderful, it seems like exaggerations.
He had his own style.
Right, whatever. They asked him. They said, Bruce, are you really as good as the people say? So you know what he answered them, right? This was like a Chinese answer, confusion kind of. You know the answers, right? He says, if I tell you, that I'm really that good, you're going to say I'm being arrogant. I'm being, gava. I have gava. I'm being arrogant. I'm being haughty. He says, if I tell you that I'm not so good, he says, I'm not telling you the truth. I'm lying to you. You understand it, right? Okay.
Even though it's both the highest level, black belt,
right,
all of them,
yeah,
they have to have kavod for the individual also.
Absolutely. Yeah,
they
no question about that.
Endearing to the people.
Yes.
They have no right to belittle.
No, there's no right to belittle.
I'm not hospitable. I'm not pointing any fingers.
Not each other or not anybody else either, right, anybody, yes.
Not even anybody that has no idea of other things. They have
Absolutely.
no right to belittle anybody.
Absolutely. No right to belittle anybody. No such a thing like this, by the way, in Judaism, to belittle anybody. Even a goy, by the way. Why should you belittle a goy? For what? You should treat him with respect.
No right.
No, right.
I'm not talking about anybody. I'm just talking about the general. He has no right to be arrogant.
Absolutely.
With anybody.
Absolutely. But the truth is, right, as we said, that the issue of being a Talmid Chacham is somebody who's like sitting and learning Torah all day, and he's passing halachot. This is something which, right, yeah.
One side, but he has to also have delecheres towards other human beings.
That's what we just mentioned right now, right? That's the idea. Right. If he doesn't have that, he's a swine with a golden ring. You understand?
In my eyes, he's nothing.
Swine.
This is why I always appreciate the rabbis that went from adopting. And in my
okay, very good. I'm glad that you were impressed by them. I don't remember. I was too young to remember these things. You were a little bit older than me at that time. I don't have any memories of what's going on.
I understand. We came to New York, and all of those rabbis in that yeshiva, they were hugging us.
Literally, right.
Not physically, but literally.
Very warm people. Very warm people. Yes.
People.
Yes.
And if somebody didn't get anything, even Gocha didn't get anything, they would explain him, and they were very tolerant.
Yes. I respect that. I respect that very much.
To me, that's a Talmid Chacham.
Absolutely. So, are you asking a question over here? Or is there a question?
I'm just making a statement.
Making a comment. Okay. I think you're right. What can I tell you? I cannot argue with the truth.
I know several rabbis that I do respect a lot in our congregation and outside of our congregation.
Right.
Yet on another hand, I know several that I totally disrespect them. And I don't care how much Torah knowledge they have.
Right.
To me, they're nothing.
To be honest with you, Jimmy, in my experience, right, in life, I can tell you one thing: that if the rabbi doesn't behave properly, that probably also indicates, as a general rule, that his knowledge is also very poor. Because if he really knows what he's doing, he shouldn't be behaving like that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's the idea. So one is connected with the other.
What he has to learn, right?
Right. Yeah, we need that. Right, we need that. Yes, we all need that. But there are some people who are.
A lot depends on the rabbi.
Right.
Again, I'm not hospitable. I'm not pointing any.
Sure.
You understand me? I'm just making a simple.
I understand you. It's. The truth is, I'm going to go off the record now, right? Because we're going to talk a little bit more privately.